Lonely single dad sat alone at Café on Christmas until the waitress walked in and made him smile. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Johann Bennett was sitting in the corner booth of Pinewood Cafe on Christmas Day, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold about an hour ago. And the waitress who'd been watching him from behind the counter for the last 2 hours finally walked over and asked him a question that would change absolutely everything. But to understand why that moment mattered, you need to know what brought a grown man to sit alone in a diner on the one day of the year when everyone else was with family. That morning, Johann's phone had rung at 8 a.m., and his daughter Ava's voice came through so excited she was practically screaming, "Daddy, Merry Christmas! Grandma made pancakes shaped like reindeer, and one of them has a really weird nose." And Johann smiled even though his chest felt tight because he should be there, watching her pour too much syrup on those pancakes. "That sounds amazing, sweetheart. Are you having the best time?" Johann asked, forcing his voice to sound lighter than he felt. And Ava said, "Yeah, but Daddy, I miss you. Are you okay by yourself? Did you open your presents yet?" And Johann looked around his living room at the Christmas tree they'd decorated together before she left. Presents underneath, waiting for when she got back from her grandparents' house, and he lied straight through his teeth. "I'm totally fine, kiddo. Don't you worry about me. I've got plans today." Which was completely untrue because his only plan was to not fall apart. And Ava said, "Okay, Daddy, I love you to the moon." And Johann said, "I love you to the stars, baby girl." And after he hung up, he sat in that empty house for exactly 10 minutes before he couldn't take it anymore. He lost his wife Sarah 3 years ago, and the grief had this way of sitting quiet most days until holidays came around. And then it showed up like an uninvited guest who wouldn't leave. And being in their house on Christmas without Sarah and without Ava felt like drowning in memories. So he grabbed his jacket and drove to the only place he knew would be open. Pinewood Cafe was this small-town diner that had been around forever. Red vinyl booths and a jukebox that only played songs from the 70s. And Johann had been coming here every single morning for the past 3 years because routines were the only thing keeping him functional. Same booth, same coffee order, same quiet existence where nobody asked him how he was really doing. The place was maybe half full, couple of families who didn't have anywhere else to go, some elderly folks who probably lived alone, and everyone else seemed to be talking and laughing while Johann just sat there like a statue made of loneliness. Hannah Rodriguez had been working since 6 that morning, and she'd volunteered to take the Christmas shift so the other waitress could be with her kids. And honestly, she preferred working today anyway, because going home to her mom's house where her dad's empty chair sat at the table felt worse than staying busy. She'd noticed the regular in booth 7 the second he walked in. The guy who never smiled, always polite, always alone, always ordered black coffee and sat there for hours like he was trying to disappear into the vinyl. But today something was different about him. He looked more hollow than usual, and Hannah recognized that look because she'd seen it in her own mirror every morning since her father passed 6 months ago. The owner, Mrs. Chen, came up beside her at the coffee station and said quietly, "You doing okay today, sweetie? I know Christmas is hard this year without your dad." And Hannah forced a smile that probably looked as fake as it felt. "I'm fine. Keeping busy helps. You know." Mrs. Chen patted her shoulder and walked away, and Hannah went back to watching the man in booth 7, who looked like he'd forgotten what it felt like to be a person instead of just going through motions. 2 hours passed and he barely moved, just stared at that coffee cup like it held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. And Hannah made a decision that was probably crossing some kind of professional boundary, but she didn't care anymore because life was too short and grief was too heavy to carry alone. She grabbed the coffee pot, walked over to his booth, and said, "Refill?" like she always did, and he nodded without really looking at her, and she poured the coffee and then sat down across from him without asking permission. "Can I ask you something personal?" Hannah said and watched his head snap up in surprise because in 3 years of serving him coffee, she'd never sat down, never pushed past the polite small talk. "Why are you here?" Hannah asked, and her voice was gentle but direct. "On Christmas. Alone. You've been sitting in this booth for 2 hours, staring at coffee. You're not drinking." Johann's face did this complicated thing where he clearly wanted to tell her to mind her business, but also looked relieved that someone finally noticed he was drowning, and he said, "I could ask you the same thing. Why are you working on Christmas? Hannah took a breath and decided to just be honest because what did she have to lose? Because this cafe was my dad's whole world. He built it from nothing, and he passed away 6 months ago. And my mom's home, recovering from surgery, and keeping this place running is the only thing that makes me feel like he's still here. Johann's expression shifted completely, all the defensive walls coming down, and he said quietly, I'm so sorry about your dad. That's really hard. Hannah nodded. It is. And you didn't answer my question. Why are you here alone on Christmas? Johann ran his hand over his face, and when he looked at her, his eyes were wet. My daughter is with her grandparents, my wife's parents. My wife passed 3 years ago, and Ava wanted to spend Christmas with them this year, and I said yes, because they're grieving too, and they deserve time with her. But now I'm sitting here realizing I have absolutely nowhere to go, and no one who's waiting for me, and I can't be in my house because it's too quiet, and I'm losing my mind. Hannah felt her throat get tight because this man just cracked himself open and handed her his pain, and she made another decision that was probably crazy, but felt absolutely right. We close at 2. I'm going home to have Christmas dinner with my mom. It's just the two of us, and she always makes enough food to feed 20 people. Would you want to join us? Johann stared at her like she'd just spoken another language. You don't even know me. And Hannah smiled for the first time all day. I know you've been coming here every morning for 3 years. You always say please and thank you. You tip 25% on a $2 coffee, and you look like you forgot what it feels like to smile. That's enough for me. I don't want to intrude on your family Christmas, Johann said, but his voice had this hopeful edge to it, like he was begging her to convince him. And Hannah leaned forward. You wouldn't be intruding. Honestly, you'd be helping me out. My mom's been worried sick about me being isolated. If I show up with a guest, she'll stop hovering and actually enjoy the day. Johann's lips twitched like they were trying to remember how to smile. So I'd be doing you a favor? And Hannah nodded. Exactly. You'd be my good deed for Christmas. Now say yes before I change my mind. Johann looked at this woman who just offered kindness to a complete stranger on the loneliest day of the year, and something in his chest that had been frozen solid for 3 years started to crack just a little bit. Okay, yes, thank you. And the words came out rough like he hadn't used them in forever. Hannah's smile got bigger, genuine and warm. Good, be back here at 2:15 and don't be late. And she stood up and walked back to the counter, and Johann sat there feeling something he hadn't felt since Sarah passed away. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't completely alone in the world anymore. And what he didn't know was that Hannah had recognized his last name from somewhere. And when she got home, she was going to discover something that would change everything. Hannah walked through her mom's front door at 2 o'clock, carrying leftover pie from the cafe, and trying to figure out how to explain that she'd just invited a complete stranger to Christmas dinner. And her mom, Grace, looked up from the kitchen, where she was basting a turkey that was way too big for 2 people. Mia, you're home early. Did Mrs. Chen close up? And Hannah set the pie down, took a breath, and said, Mom, I invited someone for dinner. Is that okay? Grace's whole face lit up like someone had plugged in the Christmas tree. Someone? Like a man? Someone? Hannah Maria Rodriguez, are you telling me you have a date? It's not a date, Mom. Stop. Hannah felt her face heating up. He's a customer who was sitting alone at the cafe on Christmas, and I felt bad. So I invited him. Don't make it into something. It's not. Grace wiped her hands on her apron, looking way too pleased with herself. What's his name? And Hannah said, Johann Bennett, and watched her mom's expression change from excited to shocked in about 2 seconds flat. Johann Bennett? The man whose daughter checks out your books? And Hannah froze because she'd forgotten her mom knew about that. And Grace was already heading to the bookshelf where Hannah kept her collection. Here's the thing. Hannah hadn't told Johann. She wrote children's books under the pen name M. Rivers, and they were kind of a big deal. Best-selling series about a girl who finds magic in everyday places, and she made enough money from royalties that she could live comfortably without working at all. But after her dad passed and her mom got sick, Hannah moved back from Seattle to run the cafe because it was her father's dream, and she couldn't let it disappear. And she wrote at night after her shifts when the house was quiet. Before the library went fully digital, They used to have checkout cards in the back of books, and Hannah had saved a bunch of them from her own books because she was sentimental like that, and one name had shown up over and over and over. Grace pulled out a shoebox from the shelf and handed it to Hannah. Look at these again and tell me this is just a coincidence. And Hannah opened the box, even though she already knew what she'd see. Checkout cards from the library, her books, and written in careful kid handwriting on every single one. Ava Bennett, Ava Bennett, Ava Bennett. Some of them checked out 5 or 6 times. I recognized his last name when he paid with his card a few months ago, Hannah said quietly. But I didn't say anything because how do you bring that up without sounding like a total creep? Hey, I know your daughter because I stalk library records. Grace put her hand on Hannah's shoulder. Maybe it's not random, Mija. Maybe you were supposed to help each other. You're both grieving, you're both alone, and his daughter loves your books. That means something. Hannah shook her head. It means his kid has good taste in reading. That's it. We're just two lonely people having Christmas dinner. Don't turn this into some fairy tale. Grace smiled in that knowing way moms do. We'll see, and went back to the kitchen, and Hannah sat there staring at those checkout cards, wondering what the odds were that the saddest man she'd ever seen was the father of her most loyal reader. Johann showed up at 2:20 with flowers for Grace because his mama raised him right even if his life had fallen apart. And when Hannah opened the door, he looked terrified. I almost bailed 3 times on the drive over, but then Ava called, and when I told her I was having dinner with people, she sounded so happy I couldn't cancel. Hannah took the flowers. Well, I'm glad you didn't bail. Come in before you freeze. It's like 20 degrees out there. And led him inside where Grace was waiting with the biggest smile Hannah had seen in months. Dinner was actually amazing in a way Hannah hadn't expected. Grace told embarrassing stories about Hannah as a kid. She used to write stories on napkins and leave them around the cafe for customers to find. Drove her father crazy because we'd run out of napkins, and Hannah groaned, Mom, please, you're going to scare him away. And Grace just laughed. Good, then we'll know he's not worth keeping. Johann actually smiled, like a real genuine smile that made him look 10 years younger, and he told stories about Ava getting paint in her hair during art class and trying to hide it under a hat for 3 days. And Hannah watched him transform from the hollow man in the cafe booth into someone who remembered how to be alive. They were halfway through pie when Grace said super casually, like she wasn't dropping a bomb, Hannah writes children's books, did she tell you that? And Johann looked at Hannah with surprise. Wait, what? You're a writer? Hannah shot her mom a look that said, we're talking about this later. I write under a pen name. It's not a big deal. But Johann was leaning forward now, interested. That's incredible. What name? Maybe Ava's read your stuff. She goes through books like crazy. Hannah felt her heart start pounding because this was the moment where she either lied or told the truth and changed everything. M. Rivers, Hannah said quietly. I write under M. Rivers. And watched Johann's fork literally stop in midair, his whole body going still. You're M. Rivers. You wrote The Adventures of Penny in the Magic Library? The treehouse at the end of the world? And Hannah nodded, her throat tight, and Johann's eyes filled with tears right there at the dinner table. Ava loves your books. They're her absolute favorites. When her mom passed, Ava stopped talking for almost 2 months, wouldn't read, wouldn't engage with anyone, and then her teacher gave her one of your books and something clicked, and she started reading again, started talking again. Your books brought my daughter back to me. Hannah was crying now too, and the words just spilled out. I knew. I saw her name on the library checkout cards before everything went digital. I recognized your last name months ago when you paid at the cafe, but I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding like a stalker. Johann stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You've been watching me? And Hannah shook her head. Not watching, just noticing. You look so broken, and knowing that your daughter loved my books, I just felt connected to you somehow. I wanted to help, but didn't know how. Grace quietly stood up and excused herself. I'm going to go check on something in the other room that definitely needs checking, and left them alone at the table. And Johann said in this wrecked voice, your book saved my daughter when I couldn't. I never thought I'd get to meet you, let alone thank you. Hannah reached across the table. She saved herself. I just wrote some words on paper. But Johann shook his head. No, you gave her hope when the whole world felt hopeless. You have no idea what that means to me. They were sitting close now, the space between them charged with something neither of them knew how to name. And then Johann's phone rang loud in the quiet, Ava's face filling the screen on a FaceTime call. He answered and Ava was bouncing in her pajamas. Daddy, guess what Grandma and Grandpa got me for Christmas? And she held up a brand new hardcover book, the latest M. Rivers release that had just come out 2 weeks ago. I've been waiting forever for this one. The library didn't even have it yet. And Johann's face did something complicated, looking at the book and then at Hannah and then back at Ava. That's great, sweetheart. I'm really happy for you, Johann said, but his voice sounded strained, and Ava tilted her head. Daddy, are you okay? You look weird. Are you crying? Johann wiped his eyes. I'm fine, baby, just having a good day. And Ava smiled. Good, you should have good days. Okay, I gotta go. Grandma's making hot chocolate. Love you to the moon. And the call ended before Johann could respond. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loud against the floor. I need to go. And Hannah stood too, confused. What? Why? Did I do something wrong? You're this incredible person who writes books that save kids, and I'm just some guy who can't even keep his daughter company on Christmas. I don't belong here. Johann was backing toward the door, grabbing his coat, and Hannah followed him. Johann, that's not true. You're an amazing father. Ava is clearly happy and loved. But he was shaking his head. Thank you for dinner. Tell your mom thank you. I have to leave. And he was out the door before Hannah could stop him, and she stood there in the doorway, watching his truck pull away into the snowy night. Grace came up behind her. What happened? And Hannah felt tears streaming down her face. I think I just scared away the first person who really understood me in 6 months. And Grace put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Then go after him, Mija. But Hannah shook her head. He left, Mom. He doesn't want me to follow. And Grace turned Hannah to face her. He left because he's terrified, not because he doesn't care. Now stop standing here and go get him before you lose something that could be really beautiful. Hannah grabbed her coat and ran out into the snow without even closing the front door behind her, and she could hear her mom yelling, Take my scarf! But she was already halfway down the driveway, chasing the taillights of Johann's truck. She got lucky because his old pickup made this coughing sound and died right there at the stop sign 2 houses down, and she watched him hit the steering wheel in frustration while she ran up and knocked on the window hard enough to make him jump. Your truck broke down, Hannah said when he rolled down the window, out of breath and shivering because she'd run out without thinking in just a sweater. So you're stuck listening to me whether you want to or not. Johann stared at her standing there in the snow. You're going to freeze, get in the truck. And Hannah climbed into the passenger seat, both of them breathing hard in the small space that smelled like old coffee and pine tree air freshener. Why did you run? Hannah asked, and her voice came out more hurt than angry. And Johann wouldn't look at her, just kept his hands on the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Because you're this incredible person who writes books that change lives and I'm a disaster. I've been stuck in the same routine for 3 years. I eat at the same cafe in the same booth every single day because it's the only thing that makes sense anymore. I can't offer you anything, Hannah. I didn't ask you for anything, Hannah said, and she turned in the seat to face him. I asked you to dinner. I asked you to smile, and you did. At my mom's table, you smiled and laughed and looked like a person instead of a ghost, and then you got scared and bolted. Johann finally looked at her and his eyes were red. I haven't let myself feel anything good since Sarah passed because feeling good feels like I'm betraying her memory. Like I'm saying she didn't matter. And sitting at dinner with you and your mom, I felt happy for the first time in forever, and I didn't know what to do with that. Hannah reached over and took his hand. My therapist told me something after my dad passed. She said grief isn't about forgetting the person you lost. It's about learning to carry their love with you while still making space for new joy. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do that, but maybe we could try together? Johann's voice broke. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not ready? What if I hurt you? And Hannah squeezed his hand. What if you don't? What if we're both terrified and broken and we help each other anyway? Isn't that better than being alone? Johan's phone rang before he could answer, Ava's name lighting up the screen again, and he answered on speaker. Hey baby, everything okay? Ava's voice came through worried. Daddy, your truck died again, didn't it? I knew it would. You've been ignoring that weird sound for like 3 weeks. Johan actually laughed through his tears. How do you know about the weird sound? And Ava said, matter of fact, because I pay attention. Are you stuck somewhere? Do you need Grandpa to come get you? Johan looked at Hannah sitting next to him in the dark truck. No, sweetheart, I'm okay. Actually, I'm with someone. Remember Miss Rivers, the author of your favorite books? I'm with her. The scream that came through the phone was so loud both Johan and Hannah winced. You're with Mr. Rivers? Daddy, are you serious right now? Is she nice? Is she real? Oh my gosh, can I talk to her? And Johan held the phone toward Hannah, who took it with shaking hands. Hi, Ava. I'm Hannah. Your dad tells me you like my books. And Ava was talking so fast the words ran together. I love your books. I've read them all, like 1,000,000 times. The treehouse at the end of the world made me cry for like an hour. Are you going to write more? When is the next one coming out? Hannah was smiling so big her face hurt. I'm working on the next one right now, actually. It's about a girl who learns that it's okay to be sad and happy at the same time, that you can miss someone and still make new friends. Ava went quiet for a second, then said in a smaller voice, like missing my mom, but still being happy sometimes? And Hannah felt her throat get tight. Yeah, exactly like that. Ava was quiet another beat, then said, Is my dad happy right now? With you? And Hannah looked at Johan, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I think he might be. Do you want to ask him? Daddy? Ava's voice was serious now. Are you happy? Like really happy, not just pretend happy? And Johan took the phone back, staring at the screen at his daughter's face. Yeah, baby, I think I actually am. And his voice cracked saying it, and Ava's smile was so bright it could have powered the whole truck. Good, because Mom told me before she left that I had to make sure you kept smiling. She said she wanted you to be happy even when she couldn't be there anymore. So if Hannah makes you smile, you should keep her, okay? Johan was full on crying now. I love you so much, Ava. And she said, Love you too, Daddy. Now go fix your truck and take Hannah somewhere nice. Bye. The call ended, and Johan just sat there with tears running down his face. And Hannah didn't say anything, just waited. And finally he said, She's the best thing I ever did in my entire life. The only thing I didn't mess up. Hannah moved closer. You didn't mess up. You're raising an incredible kid who's smart and kind and brave enough to tell her dad it's okay to be happy. That's not messing up, Johan. That's doing everything right. They sat in that broken-down truck in the snow, and Johan kissed her, soft and careful like he was afraid she might disappear. And Hannah kissed him back like she was proving she was real and she wasn't going anywhere. 3 months later, Hannah was sitting in her usual spot behind the counter at the cafe when Johan and Ava walked in together for Saturday morning breakfast. And Ava ran over and climbed onto the stool, chattering about the story she was writing for school. It's about a girl whose mom becomes a star and watches over her. And the girl makes a new friend who helps her remember that it's okay to look up and smile. And Hannah felt her eyes get wet because this kid was going to break her heart in the best way. Johan slid into his old booth, but this time he wasn't alone. And when Hannah brought over coffee and hot chocolate, she sat with them on her break like she did every weekend now. 6 months after that Christmas, Johan asked Hannah to meet him at the cafe before it opened. And when she showed up confused, he was sitting in booth 7, the booth where everything started. Why are we here so early? Hannah asked, and Johan stood up, took her hands. Because this is where you saved me. This is where I learned that it's okay to let people in. And I need to ask you something here, where it all began. He got down on one knee right there in the empty cafe with the morning light coming through the windows. Hannah Rodriguez, you gave my daughter hope with your words and you gave me hope with your heart. Will you marry us, both of us? Will you let us be your family? Hannah was crying before he even finished. Yes, absolutely yes. I can't think of anything I want more. And Ava popped out from the kitchen where she'd been hiding with Grace. I knew you'd say yes. I helped to pick the ring. And all 4 of them ended up in a group hug in the middle of the cafe that Grace and Johan's dad had built. The place where broken people came to remember they weren't alone. 1 year later, they got married right there in the cafe on a Sunday when it was closed. Small ceremony with just the people who mattered. And Ava took her role as maid of honor so seriously she had a checklist on a clipboard. Johann's vows were, "You taught me that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying the love I had with me while making space for new love. And you make me want to keep living instead of just surviving." And Hannah's were, "You reminded me why I write stories, to show people that hope exists even in the darkest moments. And you gave me hope when I'd forgotten what it looked like." They danced with Ava between them, all three of them laughing, and the cafe was full of everyone who'd watched them fall in love in this exact spot. 2 years after that Christmas, the cafe looked exactly the same, except now there were photos on the wall, Hannah and Johann on their wedding day, Ava holding her first published story in the local paper, Grace with her arms around all of them. Johann came in every morning still, but now he kissed Hannah over the counter before ordering his coffee. And Ava did her homework in booth 7 after school, while Hannah wrote her next book in the quiet moments between customers. The regulars would say to new people, "See that guy? He used to sit there so sad we thought he might disappear, and that waitress saved him on Christmas. Now look at them." Sometimes the people who save us are the ones pouring our coffee, the ones working on holidays, the ones who see our pain because they've lived it too. Johann forgot how to smile until a waitress sat down uninvited and asked him why he was alone. Hannah forgot her purpose until a broken man reminded her that her words had power to heal. This story is for everyone sitting alone wondering if anyone notices, for everyone who thinks it's too late for second chances, for everyone learning that grief and joy can live in the same heart. If this reminded you that healing happens when we're brave enough to let someone in, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs hope. Thanks for being here with us, and remember, it's always okay to smile again.